Despite two attempts to murder him, multiple civil and criminal trials intended to bankrupt and imprison him, coordinated efforts by the federal government and Silicon Valley to censor him, an unconstitutional attempt to throw him off the ballot in several states, two partisan impeachments, and dozens of fabricated narratives framing him as everything from a white supremacist to a traitor who's secretly working with Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump has made it to Election Day. Now, in any other modern presidential election, this wouldn't be worth remarking on, much less celebrating. The fact that the candidate in the election made it to Election Day should just kind of be a given, but this election is different. For years, the most powerful interests in the country made an unprecedented attempt to prevent today's vote from taking place. They were unsuccessful. That's not to say these people don't have other plans in mind to prevent Donald Trump from returning to the White House. We'll probably find out about those plans soon enough, but for now, they're not in charge. Today, voters have the power to hand Trump a decisive victory. Now, on Monday, I made a straightforward argument for why Donald Trump deserves to win this election. What I didn't do is explain in depth why Kamala Harris deserves to lose. Now, in part, that's because regardless of politics, everybody knows the answer to that question. As recently as March of this year, the Washington Post, which basically functions as an arm of the DNC, published an opinion piece entitled, "For the country's sake, Kamala Harris should step aside." It made the point that Kamala is extremely unpopular, in addition to being highly unqualified for the vice presidency, much less the presidency. In response to this article, there was no meltdown among the Post's left-wing readers. Hundreds of thousands of subscribers didn't cancel their subscriptions. That's because even the readers of the Washington Post, some of the most partisan Democrats on the planet, understood that Kamala is indeed a terrible politician. To the extent that these Democrats are supporting Kamala today, for the most part, their reasoning is pretty clear. Democrats see a vote for Kamala primarily as a vote against Donald Trump. They've concocted a parade of horribles that will supposedly happen if Trump is elected, and they see Kamala, as unintelligent and unimpressive as she may be, as a bulwark against that outcome. Now, what they're actually voting for is something else entirely, though. A vote for Kamala isn't simply a vote for passive incompetence. It's a vote to upend the procedures and systems that this country has had since its founding. And these are procedures and systems that haven't always produced the ideal outcome, but they've always provided the framework that's necessary for self-correcting and improving the country to get us to the place we are today. A vote for Kamala is a vote to suspend the First Amendment, to begin a campaign of religious and political persecution, to empower warmongers in the Pentagon and the defense industry, to implement unprecedented price controls and taxes that will cripple the American economy, to further undermine the rule of law, to quash American technological innovation at companies like Tesla and SpaceX, to demonize men, especially white men, and to double down on deranged procedures like child sex changes, which have ruined so many young lives. And let's take these points in turn, beginning with Kamala's flagrant disregard for free speech. Now, the last time she ran for president in 2019, Kamala thought she had a gotcha moment during one of the primary debates. And you could tell that she rehearsed it, that she thought she was really doing something profound here. But all Kamala actually accomplished was demonstrating that she is to the left of Elizabeth Warren on the First Amendment, which is no small feat. Watch.
Senator Warren, I just want to say that I was surprised to hear that you did not agree with me that on this subject of what should be the rules around corporate responsibility for these big tech companies, when I called on Twitter to suspend Donald Trump's account, that you did not agree, and I would urge you to join me, because here we have Donald Trump, who has 65 million Twitter followers, and is using that platform as the president of the United States to openly intimidate witnesses, to threaten witnesses, to obstruct justice. And he and his account should be taken down. We saw in El Paso that shooter in his manifesto was informed by how Donald Trump uses that platform. And this is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site. It is a matter of safety and corporate accountability.
Thank you. Senator Warren, you can respond.
So, look, I don't just want to push Donald Trump off Twitter. I want to push him out of the White House. That's our job.
Join me in saying that his Twitter account should be shut down.
Let's figure out.
No.
So this went on for several more minutes. Elizabeth Warren kept refusing to take the bait because what Kamala was proposing was obviously insane. She wanted Warren to join her in calling for the censorship of the sitting president of the United States. The pretext was that Trump had supposedly tweeted mean things about Democrats and their attempts to impeach him, And so Kamala wanted Trump to be banned on social media as a result of that. This was a recurring theme of Kamala's 2019 presidential campaign. That same year, she promised to double the number of bureaucrats who would, quote, hold social media platforms accountable. Watch.
And will put the Department of Justice of the United States back in the business of justice. We will double the Civil Rights Division and direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to help fight against this threat to our democracy. And if you profit off of hate, if you act as a megaphone for misinformation or cyber warfare, if you don't police your platforms, we are going to hold you accountable as a community.
It was moments like this one that led Democrat primary voters to reject Kamala's entire campaign. By October, Kamala's poll numbers lagged behind Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders by double digits, even in her own home state of California. And we all know what happened next. She became Joe Biden's running mate because he needed to pick a black woman in the summer of BLM. And when the Biden-Harris administration took power, the social media censorship commenced immediately. The White House press secretary even admitted that the Biden-Harris administration worked with Facebook to censor posts that they deemed to be, quote unquote, misinformation. Watch.
This is a big issue of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic. In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation. We're working with doctors and medical professionals to connect to connected medical experts who are popular with their audiences with accurate information and boost trusted content. So we're helping get trusted content out there.
Now, the Biden-Harris administration didn't want you to talk about where COVID came from or whether masks worked or whether the COVID shot worked or whether social distancing worked or whether lockdowns worked. If you did any of those things, then they tried to get you banned on social media along with Trump. That's how these kinds of crackdowns always work. They don't just target Trump, begins with him, and then they work their way down. That's exactly what's been happening. Under the Biden-Harris administration, a 69-year-old woman and breast cancer survivor was sentenced to 2 months in federal prison for the nonviolent offense of demonstrating, parading, or picketing in the U.S. Capitol building. This is a woman who actually tried to prevent other people from entering the Capitol when she heard that Trump told everyone to go home. She also has gone on the record apologizing for even participating in the protest. But the DOJ threw her in prison anyway. At around the same time, the DOJ was dismissing dozens of cases against Antifa rioters who sieged a federal courthouse in Portland. And some of those rioters had allegedly assaulted federal officers, which is a lot more than the elderly grandmother with cancer did. But, of course, they were never punished. Now, things might have been different if, instead of throwing Molotov cocktails and assaulting police officers, those rioters had decided to peacefully pray in front of the courthouse instead. You know, that would have been a problem, especially if they obstructed access to the building, allegedly. And we know that because under Kamala Harris, the DOJ has gone out of its way to target pro-life demonstrators for peaceful demonstrations at abortion clinics. One of those demonstrators was a 75-year-old woman named Paulette Harlow. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison for participating in the blockade of a Washington abortion clinic, along with 9 other co-conspirators, quote unquote. According to court documents, Harlow sat in the chairs that they had placed to obstruct passage into the clinic's treatment area and chained and roped themselves together. In other words, there was no destruction of property. There was no arson. Nobody attacked a police officer or vandalized anything. Nothing violent happened. All of those things happened in Portland and across the country during the BLM riots, but they didn't happen in this case. All this elderly woman did was block access to an abortion clinic in violation of a federal law that's specifically written to protect access to abortion clinics. And this time around, Kamala Harris's DOJ didn't drop the charges or let this woman go free with a warning, as we've seen happen with DAs all over the country, letting violent criminals go free, having mercy on them. But not for this woman. No mercy. No criminal record. Didn't harm anyone. Didn't destroy any property. No, you're going to prison. No, instead, after the police removed her, Kamala Harris's DOJ decided to send her to federal prison in order to send a message. And that message is clear. If you riot for left-wing causes, Kamala will raise bail money to get you out. She'll make sure you're not prosecuted, but if you demonstrate peacefully for pro-life causes, you'll be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This is often described as anarcho-tyranny. It's the defining aspect of the legal system under Kamala Harris. Laws don't apply to party loyalists. Meanwhile, tyranny applies to anyone who opposes the party. And to be clear, when I say the party, I'm talking about a party that's completely unrecognizable from what it was just a decade ago. Democrats who once warned about the potential abuses of secret surveillance courts and used to call Dick Cheney a Nazi for what he did to Iraq, they're now fully on board with empowering the FBI and waging foreign wars. That's the main reason why Tulsi Gabbard and Elon Musk are for Trump, while Kamala Harris is out campaigning with Liz Cheney. A vote for Kamala is a vote for the defense industry and the Pentagon. It's that simple. Inside the Democrat Party, there's no sense of shame or self-awareness about any of this. Instead, they're talking about promoting Liz Cheney to run the DOJ or the FBI or the CIA if Kamala Harris wins. Watch.
I have a question. Are you also a lawyer?
Yeah, I am.
So you could conceivably be a great AG if this was... Because, and I say this because your moral core is magnificent.
Wow.
And I know you probably don't want it, you don't want to think about it, but I just feel like I would feel a lot better with you leading the FBI, the CIA, the NBC, the LMNT, everybody. That's just me. So I'm just saying, should it be floated? Please think about it.
And under the radar.
We have to get Vice President Harris elected.
Yes.
Really, like,
well, you know, I'm being.
You're putting it out there in the universe.
I'm putting it in the universe.
Manifest.
Because that's how we do things.
There's the great courage of Liz Cheney, by the way. You know, we always hear about how Liz Cheney, she stood up against her own party. She stood to risk everything, standing up against her. Yeah, she risked a whole lot. This is what she risked, right? This was the risk, is that by doing what she did, now she gets invited on, network TV. She gets invited on The View. She's got the mainstream media singing her praises, which they never would do. If she had not come out for Kamala, if she had not come out against Trump, if she'd even stayed just moderate rather than full on left wing, all these people would hate her. So this is the courage. She stood to gain nothing except like all of this, except money, fame, praise. So this is what a vote for Kamala would accomplish. There's a very good chance that Kamala Harris would put a Cheney back in control of the security state and the CIA. And we all know what that would mean. It would mean a lot more money flowing into the defense industry and inevitably a lot more warfare. It'd be the exact opposite of what we all experienced during 4 years of Donald Trump in the White House, when we didn't start any foreign wars and we prevented wars from breaking out all over the world. Donald Trump often likes to say that when he was in office, that he was able to prevent wars by convincing foreign leaders, from Putin to Kim Jong-un, that war wasn't in their best interests. Now, Democrats often mock him for saying these kinds of things, but consider the fact that prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Kamala was dispatched to Europe in an effort to alleviate tensions, and we all know how that worked out. Then consider the fact that Kamala isn't even capable of doing a short, friendly internet show without a script. So imagine what she would be like in front of foreign leaders. And to give just the latest example of this problem, Kamala was recently booked for an internet show called Subway Takes. And the premise is that the host, a guy named Rama, interviews a guest about some controversial take they have on some subject. For example, a guest might say that it's fine to ghost people. And they'll go back and forth and they'll argue it out. It's supposed to be lighthearted stuff, right? It'd be impossible to screw it up. How do you screw it up? But according to the New York Times, somehow Kamala managed to screw it up. First, Harris's team prevented Rama, who's a Muslim, from asking any questions about the war in Gaza. And then when it came time for Harris to defend her controversial take, things got even worse. Quote, "What happened was a dispute over Harris's take. Rama said that he had been told that the vice president would be taking a stand against removing one's shoes on airplanes. When they sat down, however, Harris had surprised him with a different take. Bacon is a spice. Now, Rama, who doesn't eat pork for religious reasons, was taken aback. I don't know, he says. Harris elaborates that bits of cooked bacon can be used to enhance a meal like any other seasoning. Think about it, it's pure flavor, she says. Rama asks Harris if he can use beef or turkey and what kind of dishes would benefit from bacon. He then pauses the interview and tells her that he doesn't eat it. He asks if they can do the airplane steak instead, but on the advice of a staffer, Harris decided to declare her love of anchovies on pizza, an alternative the campaign had floated earlier in the email. Rama wraps the discussion 1 minute later. Now, to be clear, this is not satire. This is an article written, published in a paper that just endorsed Kamala, that's extremely friendly towards her campaign. So to recap, she didn't want to talk about the war in Gaza because she might offend someone. So instead, she tries to convince this Muslim influencer that bacon is a spice because it's pure flavor. And then when she realizes that she's ticked him off, she panics and turns to her staff, who tells her to start talking about maybe the most cliche and boring take imaginable, which is that anchovies go well on pizza. Then the host scraps the entire interview and didn't air it because it was so unwatchable and dull and fake. And also, for the record, bacon is obviously not a spice, it's a protein. It's like if somebody asks what kind of spice you put in your chili and you say ground beef. Like, it makes no sense. But anyway, again, imagine this person sitting across from Vladimir Putin for 10 seconds, even. There's not a person on the planet who thinks that he'd take her seriously. Nor would he have any reason to take her seriously. Of course, Kamala's inability to string together a coherent thought isn't just a liability on the international stage, it's a liability here as well. A few weeks ago, Kamala was asked about how she'd vote on Proposition 36, which is a California ballot initiative that would allow for enhanced sentences for people who commit retail theft or drug crimes. As a voter who's registered in California, not to mention the Democrats' nominee for president, stands to reason that she'd have some opinion on this particular proposal. At the time, she said that she was considering her vote carefully, and she'd have to get back to the reporter. Watch.
On Prop 36 in California, you are a California voter. Do California and other states need to punish drug and theft crimes more harshly?
So I have not yet voted, and I have not yet had the chance to read through the ballot. I will keep you posted on that.
Okay, so fast forward more than a week, and Kamala was asked again about her position on Proposition 36. Again, this is not a complicated question, but again, she did not answer it. This time she just refused entirely. Watch.
Simply, how are you feeling, and have you submitted your ballot?
I am feeling great. I am looking forward to these next 48 hours to continue to talk with the voters and talk about the stakes and talk about the future of our country, which I think is bright when we are working with the same spirit of building community, building coalitions, and building the strength of our economy and our country. I actually just filled out my mail-in ballot, so I have voted.
Darlene. Madam Vice President, have you returned the ballot to California, and how did you vote on Prop 36?
So my ballot is on its way to and I'm going to trust the system that it will arrive there. And I am not going to talk about the vote on that because, honestly, it's the Sunday before the election, and I don't intend to create an endorsement one way or another around it. So, but I did vote.
Now, the word disqualifying is thrown around a lot in politics, but if the word applies to anything, it's this. Kamala is refusing to comment on a proposition that's polling extremely well in California because it's obviously necessary. Specifically, Prop 36 would roll back some criminal justice reform, so-called, from a decade ago. It would make it a felony for people with 2 or more previous theft-related convictions to steal more than $950 from a store. Currently, it's only a misdemeanor. Additionally, if somebody has 2 or more drug convictions and then gets charged with possessing fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, meth, then they can be ordered to get treatment under this new proposition. And if they fail to comply, they can go to prison for up to 3 years. Now, these are extremely basic, bare minimum, bare bones provisions. The fact that Kamala can't be bothered to voice support for something so basic is a clear indicator that if elected, she would allow lawlessness to prevail in major cities across the country. It's also a sign that she's completely incapable of answering a question where her answer hasn't been scripted in advance, which is also disqualifying. That's not even getting into Kamala's plans to implement price controls on groceries or to tax unrealized capital gains for the first time in the country's history. These are proposals that Kamala Harris's campaign pitched in a document dump on a Friday, but Kamala herself has never actually elaborated on any of them. That's probably because she has no idea what the implications of any of these policies would be. We're talking about massive, unprecedented government meddling in the economy, and the person who wants to be president can't even articulate how she's going to do it without destroying everything. What happens when the government tells a grocery store what price to charge? What happens to your 401k when the government tells rich people to pull hundreds of billions of dollars out of the markets to pay for some new tax? Kamala has no idea. She's hoping you don't mind finding out the hard way. Now, so far, I've only been covering Kamala's stated policy positions in the current campaign. I've given her the benefit of the doubt that she's really reversed all of her positions from a couple of years ago, but we all know that's not true. We all know she fully supports a ban on fracking, mandatory gun confiscation, defunding police departments, opening the border, decriminalizing border crossings, eliminating private health insurance, permitting child mutilation in the name of gender-affirming care, quote unquote, and so on. But even if you pretend that Kamala doesn't believe any of that anymore, even if you choose to look only at the policy positions she's gone out of her way to promote in the last couple of months only, she's still the single most radical and incompetent presidential candidate in modern history. So this is the closing argument against Kamala Harris. Even Democrats know that everything I just said is accurate. The only question left is whether Democrat voters simply don't care. These people know that Donald Trump isn't calling for a national abortion ban. They know that he didn't praise white supremacists. They know that he didn't say Liz Cheney should be shot. These are all pretexts. The real question is whether this woman, who nobody really likes and nobody really believes in, will end up becoming the most powerful person in the world anyway. Now, I feel cautiously optimistic that the answer will be no. But very soon, we'll know for sure. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.